Welcome to English in Mastery. Let's begin. Take a moment. Before we start, just take a breath. You're not studying right now. You're not being tested. You're simply listening. Imagine this. You're at an airport. Not rushing yet. Not stressed yet. You've already arrived. You're standing there with your bag. People are moving around you. Some are quiet. Some are talking. You hear rolling suitcases. Soft announcements in the background. This is where English suddenly feels real. And maybe that's why airports make you nervous. Because English stops being a lesson and becomes life. If you've ever thought, I understand English, but I can't speak, this video is for you. If you've ever stood somewhere, knowing the words in your head, but feeling your voice disappear, this video is for you. And if you're someone who wants to sound calm, natural, and confident, not perfect, just real, you're exactly where you need to be. In this video, I'm going to stay with you. I'm not going to rush you. I'm not going to throw grammar rules at you. We're going to move step by step. The same way real life moves. You don't need to repeat out loud. You don't need to pause or write anything down. Just listen. Let the language settle. And before we go any further, if you enjoy learning English this way, slow, real, and practical, take 1 second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps this channel reach people who need it. And if something in this video feels familiar to you, leave a comment later. Even 1 sentence is enough. Now, let's begin. Picture yourself walking into the airport building. The doors slide open. The air feels different, cooler, cleaner. You look up and see signs everywhere. Departures, arrivals, check-in. These words are simple. You've seen them before, but today, they're not vocabulary. They're directions. You don't need to think in full sentences yet. At this moment, English is just guiding you. You follow the sign that says, Departures. You already know where you're going. As you walk, you notice something important. Nobody is speaking perfect English. Not the travelers. Not even the staff. People speak clearly. They speak simply. They speak only as much as they need to. That's the first secret of airport English. Less is more. You don't need long sentences. You don't need fancy words. You need the right words. At the right moment. Now you see the check-in area. Long counters. Screens above them. Airline names. Flight numbers. You stop walking. You look at the screen. Your flight is there. And now, something happens. You feel that familiar tension. The moment where English feels close and far at the same time. This is where many people freeze. They start preparing sentences in their head. They worry about accents. They worry about mistakes. Let me tell you something important. The person behind the counter is not judging your English. They're doing a job. They want things to move smoothly, just like you do. They will guide the conversation. And most airport conversations follow a pattern, a very predictable one. When it's your turn, you walk forward. You stand there. You make eye contact. You don't need to smile too much. You don't need to explain your life story. The staff member will usually start. They might say, hello, or good morning, or sometimes nothing at all. This is normal. Then comes the first real sentence. A sentence you will hear in almost every airport in the world. May I see your passport? Listen to it again. May I see your passport? Not fast. Not dramatic. Just calm. You don't answer with a speech. You don't answer with grammar. You simply respond, "Here you go," or "Sure," or even just handing it over. That's it. This is something many learners don't realize. Silence is allowed. Actions are allowed. English at the airport is not about talking a lot. It's about understanding what's happening. Now the staff member looks at the screen, types something, then asks another question. Where are you flying today? This question sounds longer, but it's still simple. They're not asking for details. They just want the destination. Your answer can be short. I'm flying to London, or to New York, or I'm going to Paris. Notice something here. People don't always speak in full textbook sentences. They speak in useful ones. I'm flying to, I'm going to. Both are natural. Both are correct. At this point, you might feel your confidence grow a little, because nothing bad happened. You understood. You answered. And this is how confidence actually builds, quietly, naturally. The staff member may ask about your luggage. Do you have any bags to check in? This is another sentence you will hear, again and again. Check-in means bags that go under the plane. You don't need to explain. You just answer. Yes. One bag. Or, no. Just a carry-on. Simple words. Clear meaning. If you ever don't understand, this is important. You are allowed to ask. You can say, "Sorry," or "Could you repeat that? Please." Native speakers use these phrases all the time. Asking again does not mean your English is bad. It means you are communicating. Now, let's slow down for a moment. If this already feels useful to you, if you can imagine yourself in this situation, stay with me. This video is designed to slowly raise your level. We'll start simple. And without you noticing, your understanding will deepen. Your responses will become more natural. You don't need to push yourself. Just keep listening. In the next part, we'll stay at the counter a little longer. We'll go through real questions, real answers, and the small details that make you sound calm and confident. For now, just remember this. Airport English is not about being perfect. It's about being clear. And you're already doing better than you think. You're still standing at the counter. Nothing has gone wrong. In fact, everything is moving exactly the way it should. This is something many people don't realize about airports. They are built for people who don't share the same language. That's why the English you hear here is clear, neutral, and repetitive. The staff member looks at your passport again. They might ask something that sounds a little more serious. Is this your first time flying with us? Or maybe, have you flown with this airline before? These questions are not tests. They're just checking information. You don't need a complicated answer. You can say, "Yes, it is," or "No, I have," or "Not my first time." Short answers are normal here. Then comes another very common moment. They ask about your seat. Do you have a seat preference, window or aisle? This question often surprises learners, but the answer is easy. Window, please, or aisle, please, or no preference. That's it. Notice how polite words like please appear naturally. You don't need to force them. You just add them at the end. Now the staff member prints something. You hear the sound of paper. They hand you your boarding pass. Here's your boarding pass. Sometimes they'll add information. Boarding starts at 9:40. Your gate is 32B. You don't need to respond with a sentence. A simple thank you is enough. And this is important. In real life, English, thank you does a lot of work. Now let's pause the scene for a moment. Think about what just happened. You heard natural English. You understood the key points. You responded simply. This is real communication. Many people believe they need advanced English to travel. That's not true. They need calm English. Now, let's move forward. You leave the check-in counter and walk toward security. You follow the signs. Security. Security check. This area feels different. There's more waiting, more instructions, more voices. Here, English becomes more direct. The officers don't speak politely for long. They speak efficiently. You approach the line. Someone gestures and says, "Passport and boarding pass. Please." Again. Too simple. You hand them over. They check. They give them back. Then you hear instructions. Take off your jacket. Take off your shoes. Put your bag on the belt. These sentences are commands. They're not rude. They're just clear. Notice the structure. They don't say, "Could you please take off your shoes?" They say, "Take off your shoes." This is very common in airports. You don't answer with words. You answer with actions. You place your bag on the belt. You step forward. Someone might say, "Empty your pockets." That means keys, phone, coins. Everything goes into the tray. If you don't understand something, you can point and ask, like this, or say, "Sorry." Both are completely acceptable. Native speakers use sorry all the time. It's not rude. It's practical. After security, you collect your things. You put your shoes back on. You breathe again. That moment, right there. When you walk away from security, many people feel relief. And now comes a quieter part of the airport. You're inside. You see shops, cafes, people sitting with coffee and laptops. This is where English becomes softer again. If you buy something, the interaction is simple. "Hi. Hi. Can I get a coffee?" "Sure." "What size medium?" "Please." You pay. "Thank you. Have a good flight." These exchanges happen thousands of times a day. They are predictable. They are friendly. Now, let's talk about something important. Understanding announcements. Airport announcements often sound fast, sometimes unclear, but you don't need to understand every word. You only need to listen for key information. Flight number, destination, gate, time. For example, you might hear something like, "Attention passengers on flight BA 218 to London." You don't need the rest yet. Your ears wake up when you hear your flight. Boarding will begin shortly at gate 32B. The key words are there. Boarding. Gate Transit Shidoiba. That's enough. This is a skill. Listening for meaning, not perfection. Now imagine you're sitting near your gate. You check the screen. Your flight still says, "On time." Good. But sometimes, things change. You might see a word you don't like. Delayed. This is very common. Delayed means late, not canceled, just late. If you're unsure, you can ask. You walk up to the counter and say, "Excuse me, is this flight delayed?" This sentence is simple and natural. They might say, "Yes, it's delayed about 30 minutes," or "Just a short delay." You don't need to respond much. "Okay. Thank you." Again, English is doing its job. You're getting information. Now, let's talk about boarding. When boarding starts, you hear another announcement. Now boarding Group 1. Passengers in Group 1 may board. Groups are normal. You check your boarding pass. You wait. When it's your turn, you walk forward. You show your boarding pass. Sometimes they say nothing. Sometimes they say, "Have a good flight." You can reply, "Thank you." And that's it. You walk down the jet bridge. You enter the plane. At this point, many people relax. The hardest part is over. But English doesn't stop here. Inside the plane, you might hear, "Welcome on board. Please place your bag in the overhead bin." If you need help, you can ask, "Is this seat 24A? Can I put my bag here?" These are real, useful sentences. Notice something again. They're short. They're clear. They're human. Now, let's pause. If you're still listening, that means this style of learning works for you. And if it does, take a second later to like this video and subscribe to the channel. This channel is built for people who want real English, not classroom English. In the next part, we'll go deeper into conversations, not just answers, but small talk, polite phrases, and the kind of English that makes you sound comfortable, not nervous. For now, remember this. Every step you've heard so far is something millions of people do every day. And they do it in simple English. So can you. Now you're on the plane. But let's slow the moment down, because this part matters more than people think. You step inside the aircraft. The space is narrow. People are moving slowly. Someone is looking for their seat. Someone is lifting a bag into the overhead bin. A flight attendant is standing nearby. They look at you and smile. "Hello," or "Welcome." You don't need to respond with anything special. "Hi," or "Hello." That's enough. You check your boarding pass again. Row number, seat letter. You stop and look up. You might say, "Is this 24A?" This is a very natural question. People ask it all the time. The flight attendant might answer, "Yes, that's right." Or, "Just a little further down." If you didn't hear clearly, you can say, "Sorry," or "This way." You point. They point back. Communication doesn't always need full sentences. In real life, gestures and short words work together. You reach your seat. Someone might already be sitting there. This happens often. You look at them and say, "Hi." Then, "I think this is my seat." Notice the tone. Calm. Not aggressive. Not apologetic. "I think this is my seat." That phrase is very useful. It's soft, but clear. They check their boarding pass. "Oh, sorry." They move. "No problem. No drama." You put your bag away. You sit down. Now comes a quiet moment. You fasten your seatbelt. You look around. This is where small talk sometimes happens. Not always, but often enough. The person next to you might say, "Are you traveling for work or vacation?" This question is common, especially on long flights. You don't need a long story. You can say, "For vacation," or "For work." If you want to add more, you can, but you don't have to. Sometimes they say, "Where are you from?" Again, very normal. You answer simply, "I'm from Brazil." "I'm from Italy." "I'm from South Korea." You don't need to explain your whole background. If you don't feel like talking, that's okay too. You can smile and answer briefly. People understand. Now let's talk about something important. Understanding instructions during the flight. Before takeoff, the crew makes announcements. Some are live. Some are recorded. They might say, "Please fasten your seatbelt." Please turn off electronic devices. The tone is polite, but firm. You don't respond. You just listen and follow. If you're unsure, look around. What are other people doing? This is a real-life strategy. Native speakers do this too. Now the plane takes off. The noise increases, then slowly fades. After some time, the crew starts service. A flight attendant comes to your row. They might ask, "Would you like something to drink?" This sentence is extremely common. They may speak quickly, but the structure is always similar. Would you like? You can answer in many simple ways. Yes. Please. No. Thank you. Water. Please. Coffee. Please. You don't need full sentences. If they offer choices, they might say, coffee, dust, or juice. You can repeat the word tea, please. Repeating is natural. It shows clarity. Now imagine something else. You don't hear them clearly. The engine noise is loud. You can say, "Sorry, could you say that again?" This is polite and natural. You can also say, "Sorry, I didn't catch that." This phrase is very common among native speakers. It means, "I didn't hear you." Now let's move forward in time. The flight is over. The plane lands. You hear applause sometimes. You hear people unbuckling. The crew says, "Welcome to New York," or wherever you are. They give information. Please remain seated. Local time is. Again, you don't need to understand everything. You listen for what matters. Now you leave the plane. You follow the crowd. You see signs again. Arrivals, immigration, passport control. This part can feel stressful, but the language is still predictable. You stand in line. You wait. When it's your turn, you step forward. The officer might say, "Passport, please." They might not smile. That's normal. You hand it over. Then come questions. What is the purpose of your visit? This question sounds formal, but the answer can be simple. For tourism, for business, to visit family. You don't need long explanations. How long will you stay? 1 week, 2 weeks, 10 days. Where will you stay? At a hotel, with a friend. These are routine questions. They ask them all day, every day. If you don't understand, don't panic. You can say, "Sorry, could you repeat the question?" This is respectful and normal. The officer might repeat more slowly. After that, they stamp your passport. They give it back. Welcome, or nothing at all. You're through. Now you move to baggage claim. You see screens with flight numbers. You find yours. You wait by the belt. Someone might ask you, "Is this bag yours?" You answer, "Yes," or "No." Simple. If your bag doesn't arrive, this is when English feels important again. You go to the desk. You say, "Excuse me, my bag didn't arrive." This sentence is clear and commonly used. They may ask, "Which flight were you on? What does your bag look like?" You answer calmly, "It's black. It's a large suitcase." You don't need perfect words. They are used to this situation. Now let's pause here. Think about everything you've heard so far. None of it is advanced grammar. None of it is rare vocabulary. It's all real. It's all daily English. And without realizing it, your understanding is already deeper. This is how real fluency grows, not by memorizing rules, but by recognizing patterns. If you're still listening, That means you're building that pattern recognition. In the next part, we'll focus more on tone, politeness, and how small changes in wording make you sound more relaxed and confident. Stay with me. We're just getting started. Now let's stay with the moment after baggage claim, because this is where real-life English becomes less scripted and more human. You've picked up your bag. You're walking toward the exit. You see signs that say, customs or nothing to declare. You follow the crowd again. At airports, following the flow is often enough. A customs officer may stand near the exit. They might look at you and ask a simple question. Do you have anything to declare? This sentence sounds official, but it's very common. They're asking if you're bringing in items that need to be reported. If you don't have anything special, you can say, no, or no, I don't. If you're unsure, you can say, I don't think so. That phrase, I don't think so, is very natural. It shows honesty without sounding nervous. Sometimes they ask, are you carrying any food? Again, simple, yes, or no. They may ask a follow-up question. What kind of food? You answer briefly. Snacks. Chocolate. Nothing fresh. You don't need full explanations unless they ask. Then they wave you through. And just like that, you're out. Now you're in the arrivals hall. People are waiting. Some are holding signs. Some are hugging. This space feels emotional, and English here becomes more casual again. If someone is picking you up, they might say, did you have a good flight? This is not a deep question. It's polite conversation. You can say, yes, it was good, or it was fine, or a bit long, but okay. Notice how casual these answers are. You don't need to sound excited or detailed. If you're taking a taxi or ride service, you'll have another short interaction. You walk up and say, hi. They might ask, where to? You answer with the name of your hotel or address. If you're not sure how to pronounce it, you can show it on your phone. This is very common. Technology supports communication. If you want to sound polite, you can add, please. That's all. Now, let's step back and look at something bigger. All these situations share something important. They rely on predictable language. Native speakers don't invent new sentences at airports. They reuse familiar ones. This is why learning airport English is so powerful. It trains your ear and your confidence at the same time. Now, let's move into a slightly more advanced area, handling small problems calmly. Imagine this. You're waiting at the gate. The screen changes. Your gate number changes. This happens often. You look around. You're not sure. You can ask someone nearby. Excuse me. Did the gate change? This sentence is natural and polite. They might answer, yes. It's now gate 45. Or, I think so. Notice the phrase, I think so. It's very common in real life. It shows uncertainty without stress. If you want to double-check, you go to the desk. You say, hi, is this flight boarding here? Clear, direct. If the answer is no, they'll guide you. Now, another situation. Your flight is delayed longer than expected. You feel tired. You feel frustrated. This is where tone matters more than words. You walk up and say, excuse me, do you know how long the delay will be? The phrase do you know softens the question. It sounds respectful. They might say, we're waiting for an update, or about an hour. You can reply, okay, Thank you for letting me know. That phrase, for letting me know, sounds natural and polite. Now, let's talk about missed connections. This is stressful, even for native speakers. You run to the desk. You say, "Hi, I missed my connection." This sentence is short and clear. They may ask questions. Which flight were you on? Where are you going? You answer one thing at a time. Don't rush. Don't explain everything at once. Let the staff guide the conversation. They might say, "We can put you on the next flight." You can respond, "Okay," or "That would be great." Again, simple responses work best. Now let's shift focus slightly. Let's talk about how you sound, not just what you say. At higher levels, like C1, English is less about correctness and more about control. Control of pace, control of tone, control of emotion. At airports, calm English is powerful. Compare these two responses. "I missed my flight. I don't know what to do." Versus, "I missed my flight. What are my options?" The second one sounds more confident. It invites help. This is not advanced grammar. It's a shift in mindset. Another example. Instead of saying, "This is a problem," you can say, "This might be an issue." Might be sounds softer, less aggressive. These small changes are what move you towards C1 level communication. Now, let's return to listening skills. Airport English often comes with background noise. Announcements, engines, people talking. You won't catch every word, and that's okay. Native speakers don't either. They listen for structure. Listen for phrases like, "Attention passengers, this is the final call. We regret to inform you." These phrases signal importance. Your brain learns to wake up at these moments. This skill transfers to real life outside airports too. Now, let's imagine you're leaving the airport. You're tired, but something feels different. You've navigated an entire system in English. Not perfectly, but successfully. This is real progress. If you've made it this far in the video, you're doing something right. You're training your brain the way it learns best. Through context, through repetition, through calm exposure. If this video is helping you, take a moment to like it and subscribe to the channel. English in Mastery is about real English, used by real people, in real situations. In the next part, we'll raise the level again. We'll look at more natural phrasing, more flexible responses, and the kind of English that helps you sound comfortable even when things don't go as planned. Stay with me. You're building something solid. Now let's go a little deeper. Up to this point, you've been using English to respond, listening, answering, following instructions. This is how most people survive airports. But now we're going to move towards something more advanced. Not harder, just more natural. This is where English starts to feel less like a tool and more like something you control. Let's talk about tone first. Tone is not about vocabulary. It's about how relaxed you sound. At airports, people who sound confident don't speak faster. They speak slower. They pause. They don't rush their words. They let silence exist. For example, imagine a staff member says, "Your flight has been delayed." A nervous response might be, "Oh, really? How long is it canceled? What should I do?" A calmer response sounds like this. "Oh, okay. Pause. Do you know how long the delay is?" Same information, very different feeling. That pause matters. Pauses show control. Now let's practice hearing that kind of English. You walk up to the desk again. You say, "Hi there." That phrase, "Hi there," is friendly and natural. It sounds relaxed. Native speakers use it all the time. You continue. "I just wanted to check on the status of this flight." Listen to that sentence. "I just wanted to check." This phrase softens your question. It sounds polite, not demanding. They might respond, "At the moment." It's delayed about 45 minutes. At the moment is a common phrase. It means right now. You can answer, "Got it." "Thank you." "Got it" is very natural. Spoken English. It means I understand. Now let's look at another situation. You're not sure where to go next. Instead of saying, "I don't know where to go," you can say, "Could you point me in the right direction?" This phrase sounds advanced, but it's very common in daily use. Point me in the right direction. It doesn't mean literal pointing. It means guidance. This kind of phrase moves you closer to C1 level English, not because it's complex, but because it's idiomatic. Now let's talk about flexibility. Real-life English is flexible. People change plans. Situations shift. You might hear something like, "We're going to start boarding a bit later than expected." A bit later is vague on purpose. Native speakers are comfortable with vague language. You can respond with, "No problem." That phrase is incredibly powerful. It shows acceptance. It shows calm. Now imagine you need clarification. Instead of saying, "What does that mean?" you can say, "Just to clarify, do you mean boarding will start later?" Just to clarify is a very natural phrase. It signals a question without sounding confused. This is how confident speakers ask for clarity. Now let's move into a more complex situation. You arrive at immigration, but something is different this time. The officer asks a question you weren't expecting. "Have you traveled here before?" You pause. You think. You don't panic. You answer, "Yes, once," or "No, this is my first time." Both are fine. Then they ask, "What do you do for work?" This question is common, and many learners overthink it. You don't need a perfect job title. You can say, "I work in marketing." "I'm a software engineer." "I'm a student." Simple nouns are enough. If you want to sound more natural, you can add, "I work in," "I work as a." These are everyday structures. Now, sometimes the officer may ask a follow-up question. "How long have you been doing that?" You can answer, "About 5 years." "Just over a year." Notice about and just over. These phrases make your English sound natural. They show approximation, not precision. Native speakers rarely speak in exact numbers. Now let's talk about handling uncertainty. There will be moments when you are not sure. Maybe you don't remember a detail. Maybe you don't know an answer. It's okay to say, "I'm not entirely sure." That phrase is polite and honest. You can also say, "I'd have to check." Very natural, very real. Now, let's step back again. What you're learning here is not just airport English. You're learning how English works under pressure. You're learning how to stay calm while your brain is processing information. This skill transfers to meetings, to phone calls, to daily life. Now, let's return to the airport environment. You're waiting. Time passes. Someone sits next to you and starts talking. They might say, "Looks like we're going to be here for a while." This sentence is casual. It invites a response, but doesn't require one. You can answer, "Yeah, it seems that way." That seems that way is a soft agreement. It sounds natural and conversational. If you want to continue, you can add, hopefully it won't be too long. This phrase shows optimism without commitment. Now imagine the opposite. You don't want to talk. You can still be polite. You can say, yeah, smile, then look back at your phone or book. This is acceptable. Silence is not rude. Now let's raise the level again. Advanced speakers use hedging. Hedging means making statements softer. Instead of saying, this is wrong, you can say, this doesn't seem quite right. Instead of saying, you made a mistake, you can say, there might be a small issue here. These phrases are common in professional and public settings, including airports. Now imagine a problem with your seat. You go to the crew member. You say, hi, I think there might be an issue with my seat. Notice how gentle that sounds. They're more likely to help. They might say, let me take a look. You reply, thanks. I appreciate it. I appreciate. It is a very natural way to say thank you. It sounds sincere, not formal. Now let's focus on listening again. At higher levels, listening is about intent, not words. You may hear phrases like, we'll keep you posted. This means, we will give you updates. Or, we're still waiting on confirmation. This means, we don't know yet. Understanding these phrases helps you stay calm. Now let's talk about emotional control. Airports can be stressful. Delays, long lines, fatigue. Advanced English users manage their tone. They don't say, this is ridiculous. They say, this is a bit frustrating. Bit softens emotion. They don't say, I'm angry. They say, I'm a little concerned. This language is powerful. It helps you communicate without escalating situations. Now let's pause. If you're still listening, you're not just learning English. You're learning how English behaves in the real world. And that's what English in Mastery is about. Real phrases, real tone, real control. In the next part, we'll focus on even more advanced listening patterns. Implicit meaning. What people mean, not just what they say. Stay with me. You're moving steadily toward true confidence. Now we're going to shift into something more subtle. This is where English becomes less about words and more about reading the situation. At an advanced level, especially moving toward C1, you're not just listening to sentences. You're listening to intention. Let's start with something very common. You're at the gate. The agent makes an announcement. We're just waiting on a few final details. On the surface, this sounds neutral, but experienced listeners understand something else. It usually means there's a delay. They just don't have a confirmed time yet. This kind of language is everywhere in airports. Another example. We appreciate your patience. This almost always appears when something is not going smoothly. Boarding is slow. A system is down. A flight is late. Native speakers don't get upset by this phrase. They recognize it as a signal. So instead of reacting emotionally, they adjust their expectations. Now imagine you walk up to the desk. You say, hi, I just wanted to see if there's any update. This sentence is very natural. It doesn't demand answers. It shows awareness. They might respond. At this point, we don't have a confirmed departure time. At this point means right now. Confirmed means final. You can answer calmly, okay? Thanks for checking. That response shows maturity and control. Now let's talk about indirect language. English speakers often avoid saying things directly, especially in public or professional spaces. For example, instead of saying, "We made a mistake," you might hear, "There seems to have been an oversight." Oversight is a polite way to say mistake. Or, instead of saying, "We don't know," they say, "We're still looking into it." This doesn't mean action is happening quickly. It means information is not ready. Understanding these phrases helps you stay grounded. Now let's imagine a more challenging situation. Your seat has been changed. You hear your name called. You approach the counter. They say, "We've had to make a small adjustment to your seat." This sentence sounds harmless, but it signals change. You can respond with curiosity, not fear. "Okay, what's the change?" Simple, direct, calm. They might say, "We've moved you to an aisle seat." You can answer, "That works for me." Or, "Is there any chance of a window seat?" Notice the phrase, "Is there any chance?" This is polite and flexible. It doesn't demand. If the answer is no, they might say, "Unfortunately, that's not available." You reply, "No worries." No worries is very natural spoken English. It shows acceptance. Now let's talk about something that many learners struggle with: expressing dissatisfaction without sounding rude. Imagine your flight has been delayed multiple times. You approach the desk again. You don't say, "This is unacceptable." Instead, you say, "I'm a bit concerned about the delay." A bit concerned is measured. It communicates feeling without escalation. You can continue. "Do you know if there are any alternative options?" This phrase shows problem solving, not complaining. Now, let's examine how staff respond. They may say, "At this stage, rebooking options are limited." At this stage means for now. Limited means not many choices. You can respond with, "I understand." That phrase does a lot of emotional work. "I understand" doesn't mean you're happy. It means you recognize the situation. Now, let's move into a more conversational area. You're sitting at the gate. Someone next to you starts talking again. They say, "Traveling these days is always unpredictable." This is not a statement that requires a solution. It's a shared observation. You can respond with, "Yeah, that's true." Simple agreement builds connection. If you want to add nuance, you can say, "It definitely keeps you on your toes." This phrase means it requires attention. It's idiomatic, but very common. Now let's talk about humor. Humor at airports is often light and understated. You might hear someone say, "Well, at least we're not stuck on the runway." This is a gentle way of reframing the situation. You don't need to be funny, but understanding humor helps you feel included. Now, let's focus on advanced listening again. Sometimes, staff will speak in long sentences. For example, "Due to operational constraints, we're anticipating a further delay, but we'll provide updates as soon as we have more information." This sentence sounds complex, but the meaning is simple. There is another delay. They don't know how long. They will update later. Advanced listeners break sentences down like this automatically. They don't try to translate word by word. They listen for structure. "Due to" gives a reason. "We're anticipating" signals expectation. "As soon as" signals waiting. Now let's look at how you might respond. You don't need to mirror their complexity. You can say, "Okay, thanks for the update." Short, clear. This balance is important. Advanced speakers don't try to match complexity. They maintain clarity. Now let's imagine a rare but stressful moment. Your name is called again. You approach. They say, "We're looking for volunteers to take a later flight." This happens when flights are full. They may offer compensation. You don't have to decide immediately. You can say, "Can I get a bit more information?" This phrase buys you time. They might explain details. You can respond with, "Let me think about it for a moment." Very natural, very reasonable. If you decide no, you can say, "I'll stick with my current flight." Stick with means keep. If you decide yes, you can say, "I'm open to that." Now let's step back again. What you're learning here is strategic language. Language that helps you navigate uncertainty. Language that protects your emotional energy. This is the kind of English that confident travelers use. Not because they know more words, but because they choose them carefully. Now let's talk about endings. Eventually, every airport experience ends. You board, you fly, you arrive. And when you leave the airport, you often hear one last phrase, "Welcome," or "Have a nice stay." These phrases are small, but they signal closure. You can reply with, "Thank you," or "Thanks." That's enough. Now pause for a moment. If you're still listening at this point, your brain is doing something important. It's building intuition. You're not memorizing scripts anymore. You're recognizing patterns. This is what moves you beyond intermediate level. And in the next part, we'll focus even more on nuance, how meaning changes with tone, how silence, pacing, and word choice shape how others perceive you. Stay with me. You're not just learning English. You're learning how to carry yourself in English. At this point, your English is no longer reacting. It's responding. That difference matters. Reacting is fast and emotional. Responding is calm and intentional. Advanced speakers respond. Now let's focus on something subtle but powerful. How meaning changes without changing words. Take this simple sentence, "I'll wait here." Depending on tone, it can mean different things. Said calmly, "I'll wait here." It sounds cooperative. Said sharply, "I'll wait here." It sounds annoyed. The words are the same. The meaning changes. At airports, tone often carries more weight than vocabulary. Now imagine this situation. You're at the desk. There's a long line behind you. You feel pressure. The agent says, "We're still waiting on confirmation." You want to know more. Instead of pushing, you say, "Okay, is there a rough estimate?" Rough estimate means an approximate time. It's polite and realistic. They might answer, "Possibly another 30 minutes." Notice the word possibly. It signals uncertainty. You respond, "All right. Thanks for the heads up." Heads up is informal, spoken English. It means advance notice. This phrase is very common in real conversations. Now let's talk about silence. Silence is not a problem in English. In many cultures, silence feels uncomfortable. But in English-speaking environments, silence often means thinking. If you're asked a question and you pause, that's okay. For example, an officer asks, "How long will you be staying?" You pause for a second. Then, answer. That pause shows thoughtfulness, not weakness. Advanced speakers are not afraid of pauses. Now let's move into something even more advanced, managing expectations. Staff often use expectation-setting language. They might say, "We'll do our best." This does not mean success is guaranteed. It means effort will be made. Understanding this helps you respond appropriately. You can say, I appreciate that. That phrase acknowledges effort, not outcome. Now imagine another situation. You ask, will we make the connection? They answer, it's going to be tight. Tight means difficult, but not impossible. You can respond with, okay, we'll see how it goes. This phrase shows acceptance and realism. Now let's talk about phrasing requests. At higher levels, requests become indirect. Instead of saying, change my seat, you say, I was wondering if it might be possible to change seats. This sentence sounds long, but native speakers use this structure often. I was wondering if it softens the request. If the answer is no, you accept it. All right. Thanks anyway. Anyway, here signals closure. It shows you're not pushing further. Now let's move into conflict avoidance. Conflict avoidance is a key skill in public spaces. Imagine someone is upset near you. They raise their voice. You don't engage emotionally. You stay neutral. If you need to speak, you say, let's take a step back for a moment. This phrase lowers tension. Or, I think there's been a misunderstanding. This phrase reframes the situation. These are high-level communication skills. They rely on language, but also on control. Now let's return to listening. Advanced listening means hearing what's not said. For example, if staff says, we're doing everything we can, it often implies limitations. You don't push further. You acknowledge, okay, I understand. That response maintains respect. Now imagine a different tone. Staff says, we might be able to look into that. Might signals low probability, but not zero. You can respond with, that would be great. Thank you. You don't pressure. You allow space. Now let's talk about natural fillers. Native speakers use fillers to sound natural. Words like well, so, actually, let me see. These words buy time. For example, well, let me check. This sounds more natural than silence. You don't need to force fillers, but recognizing them helps you understand speech better. Now imagine you're asked something unexpected. What seat are you in? You're not sure. You can say, let me check. Very natural. You look at your boarding pass. 24A. That's enough. Now let's discuss emotional language. At advanced levels, emotions are expressed carefully. Instead of saying, I'm stressed, you say, it's been a long day. This communicates the feeling indirectly. Instead of saying, I'm angry, you say, I'm a bit frustrated. These phrases are socially acceptable. They don't escalate situations. Now let's imagine a long delay. People are tired. An announcement says, we apologize for the inconvenience. This phrase appears often. Inconvenience minimizes the issue. It's formal but standard. You don't react emotionally to this phrase. You recognize it as part of the system. Now let's talk about gratitude. Gratitude is used strategically in English. Not constantly, but sincerely. Instead of always saying thank you, you can say, I appreciate your help. Thanks for explaining. Thanks for your patience. These variations sound natural and thoughtful. Now let's move into a final airport scenario. You're about to leave the airport entirely. You ask someone, is this the way to the exit? Very simple. They answer, yes. Straight ahead. Straight ahead means directly forward. You say, Great. Thank you. And that's it. This interaction is small, but it represents something big. You used English naturally, without stress, without overthinking. Now let's pause again. Everything you've heard so far is built from real usage. Nothing dramatic, nothing theatrical. This is how English lives in the world. And if you're still listening, you're training yourself to live in it too. In the next part, we'll bring everything together: patterns, tone, mindset. We'll focus on how to carry this confidence beyond airports and into everyday life. Stay with me. You're closer than you think. Now let's bring everything together and go one layer deeper, because this is where advanced English quietly forms. Up to now, you've been learning how to times operate, times in English, listening, responding, adjusting. But fluent speakers do something else at the same time. They manage their asterisk, asterisk inner state, asterisk, asterisk. They don't just know what to say, they know how to times feel times while saying it. This is especially true in places like airports. Let's talk about mental positioning. When something goes wrong, fluent speakers don't think, "I need better English." They think, "This is a situation. English is just the tool." That shift changes everything. Now imagine this situation. You're at the gate. Boarding should have started. Nothing is happening. People are checking their phones, looking at the screen, sighing. You walk up calmly. You say, "Hi. I just wanted to see if boarding is still on schedule." This sentence is balanced, not demanding, not passive. The phrase "just wanted to" lowers pressure. "Still on schedule" sounds informed. They might answer, "It looks like we're running a bit behind." Running a bit behind is very common. It means late. But gently, you respond, "Okay. Thanks for the update." That response closes the loop. Now here's something important. You didn't say anything clever. You said something times appropriate asterisk. Appropriateness is the heart of advanced English. Now let's talk about flexibility in conversation. Sometimes, staff will change tone. They might sound rushed, or tired, or overly cheerful. Advanced speakers mirror tone lightly. If someone sounds rushed, you keep answers short. If someone sounds relaxed, you allow space. For example, staff says quickly, "Boarding in 10 minutes." You don't reply with a story. You say, "Got it." That's alignment. Now imagine the opposite. A staff member is friendly. They say, "It's been a long day, hasn't it?" This is not informational. It's relational. You can reply with, "Yeah, definitely." Or, "It really has." These responses build human connection. Now let's talk about transitions. Transitions are how conversations move smoothly. You might hear phrases like, "Just one moment," "Bear with me," "Let me double check that." These phrases signal waiting. Advanced listeners don't interrupt. They wait. They recognize the process. If you're the one speaking, you can use similar phrases. For example, "Just a second, let me see." These phrases buy time without awkwardness. Now let's look at more C1 level phrasing. Instead of saying, "I need help," you can say, "I was hoping you could help me with something." This phrasing is indirect, polite, and confident. You're not asking for permission to exist. You're inviting assistance. Now imagine a mistake happens. Your boarding pass doesn't scan. The machine beeps. The agent says, This sound alone communicates uncertainty. You don't panic. You say, no rush. This phrase is powerful. No rush tells the other person you are not adding pressure. They appreciate that. Now let's talk about what fluent speakers times do. They don't apologize too much. Instead of saying, sorry, 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 they say, one moment, or, excuse me. Apologies are used when necessary, not constantly. Now imagine you accidentally cut in line. You realize it. You say, oh, sorry about that. That's enough. You don't over-explain. Now let's talk about uncertainty again. Advanced speakers are comfortable saying, I'm not sure. But they often add context. I'm not sure, but I think it's gate 32. This shows effort without false confidence. Now imagine someone asks, times a question. Do you know if this flight is boarding? You don't need certainty. You can say, I'm not entirely sure, but I don't think so yet. This phrasing sounds thoughtful and honest. Now let's focus on emotional regulation again. Delays create emotion. Fluent speakers label emotion lightly. Instead of, I'm stressed, they say, it's been a bit hectic. Hectic means busy and chaotic. This word is very common. Now imagine the delay resolves. An announcement says, we're happy to announce that boarding will begin shortly. This phrase signals relief. You feel it too. You don't react dramatically. You smile. You gather your things. Now, let's talk about closing interactions. When you leave a desk or counter, you close politely. Thanks again. Appreciate it. These phrases create a positive ending. Now imagine a more personal interaction. A staff member helps you significantly. You say, thanks. That really helps. This feels sincere and complete. Now, let's step outside the airport for a moment. What you've been learning applies everywhere. Offices, hotels, hospitals, public services. Airports are just condensed life. Now let's bring attention to something subtle. Advanced speakers often downplay themselves Instead of saying, I don't understand, they say, I might be missing something. This phrase sounds collaborative. It invites clarification without blame. Now imagine a misunderstanding. You say, I might have misunderstood, but I thought boarding started at 9. This opens dialogue calmly. Now let's talk about phrasing opinions. At higher levels, opinions are softened. Instead of saying, this is confusing, you say, it's a little unclear. This language is precise and polite. Now imagine you're offered an option. They say, we can rebook you for tomorrow. You pause. You say, let me think that through. This phrase means you're considering consequences. Very natural, very adult. Now let's talk about mental endurance. 2-hour audio learning works because it lowers pressure. You're not performing. You're absorbing. This is exactly how fluent speakers learned. Through exposure, through repetition, through calm listening. Now let's pause here. If you're still listening, your English has already shifted. Not in a dramatic way, but in a stable one. You're hearing patterns. You're feeling rhythm. This is what mastery looks like. In the next part, we'll move toward completion. We'll talk about confidence as a habit, not a feeling. We'll also prepare you to carry this English beyond the airport into any real-life situation. Stay with me. We're almost there. Now let's talk about confidence as a habit, not a moment. Many people believe confidence appears suddenly. It doesn't. Confidence is built through repetition of calm experiences, exactly like the ones you've been listening to. At airports, confident speakers don't feel confident all the time. They act steady anyway. That's the difference. Now imagine this. You're tired. Your flight was long. You're walking through another terminal. Someone stops you. Excuse me. This word alone can mean many things. A question, a request, a problem. You don't tense up. You answer, yes. That's enough to open the interaction. They might ask, do you know where gate 48 is? You don't need certainty. You can say, I'm not sure, but I think it's this way. Or, I'm not sure. You might want to check the screen. Notice how natural this sounds. You're being helpful without pressure. Now let's talk about when you need help again. Instead of starting with the problem, confident speakers start with connection. They say, excuse me. Pause. Then, I was hoping you could help me. This creates cooperation. Now imagine you're confused by signage. You say, sorry, I'm a bit turned around. Is this the way to baggage claim? This phrase, a bit turned around, is very natural. It means confused about direction. Now let's move towards something important. Let's talk about asterisk. Asterisk letting go of perfect English. Asterisk, asterisk. At advanced levels, people stop chasing correctness. They chase clarity. Instead of asking, is my sentence correct? They ask, was I understood? At airports, understanding is the only real goal. Now imagine you make a small mistake. You say, I go to gate 32. Instead of, I'm going to gate 32. Does communication fail? No. You were understood. Confident speakers don't correct themselves unless necessary. They move forward. Now let's talk about self-talk. What you say inside matters. Instead of thinking, my English is bad, confident speakers think, my English works. That mindset changes how you speak. Now imagine another real situation. You're in a hurry. You approach staff quickly. You don't say, I need help now. You say, sorry to bother you. This phrase acknowledges their time. Then, I'm trying to make a connection. This phrase explains urgency without panic. They respond differently when you speak this way. Now, let's talk about advanced listening one last time. Advanced listeners listen for asterisk, asterisk function, asterisk, asterisk, not form. If someone says, we'll need a few more minutes, you don't focus on few. You focus on waiting. If they say, we'll get back to you shortly, you know not to expect immediate action. This understanding reduces anxiety. Now imagine this final airport moment. You're leaving. Someone says, safe travels. This phrase is common and warm. You can reply, thank you. Or, thanks. You too. That response feels complete. Now let's step outside the airport entirely. What you've learned applies everywhere. Restaurants, offices, hotels, public transport. The same principles apply. Short sentences, soft tone, clear intention. Now let's talk about something many learners overlook. Native speakers make mistakes too. They forget words. They hesitate. They rephrase. What makes them sound fluent is not perfection, but recovery. If you lose a word, you don't stop. You say, how do you say? Or, the thing you use to. This keeps communication alive. Now imagine you're asked a question you don't expect. You pause. You say, "Let me think for a second." This phrase buys time. Native speakers use it constantly. Now let's bring everything into one idea. Fluency is not speed. Fluency is flow. Flow means you keep moving, even when things aren't perfect. Airports teach this better than classrooms. They force you to use English under mild pressure, but in predictable ways. Now let's talk about consistency. Listening to English like this regularly changes how your brain reacts. You stop translating. You start anticipating. You hear patterns before words. This is how C1 level understanding forms. Not through effort, but through exposure. Now, let's prepare to close. Before we do, ask yourself something simple. Did this English feel real? Did it sound like people you've heard before? If the answer is yes, that's because this language lives in the world, not in textbooks. And if this style of learning helps you, remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel. English in Mastery is built for learners who want calm confidence, not pressure. Now, in the final part, we'll close this journey properly. We'll talk about how to keep this confidence, how to continue improving naturally, and how to trust your English moving forward. Stay with me for the last part. Now let's bring this journey to a close, in the same calm way it began. Not with pressure, not with rules, but with clarity. You've spent a long time listening, longer than most people allow themselves to, and that matters. Because real progress in English doesn't happen in moments of effort. It happens in moments of time's exposure asterisk. What you've been doing is training your nervous system, not just your vocabulary. You've been teaching your brain something important. That English does not mean danger. That English does not mean embarrassment. That English is simply part of the environment. Like sound, like movement, like people. Now let's reflect on what actually changed. At the beginning, English might have felt like something you had to times prepare times for. You needed the right words, the right structure, the right timing. But now, English feels more like something you times step into. Asterisk. You don't need to be ready. You just need to be present. That shift is the foundation of advanced fluency. Now, let's talk about what comes next. Because confidence doesn't come from one video. It comes from how you use times what you've absorbed. The most important habit you can build after this is simple. Keep exposing yourself to real English. Not fast English. Not dramatic English. But calm. Functional. Everyday English. The kind you heard throughout this entire experience. You don't need to listen actively all the time. You don't need to take notes. Let English exist around you. That's how native speakers learned. They didn't study first. They lived first. Now let's talk about trust. One of the biggest barriers to C1 level English is lack of trust in yourself. You might understand a sentence perfectly, but still doubt whether you understood it correctly. Fluent speakers don't do that. They trust their first understanding unless proven otherwise. This doesn't mean they're always right. It means they move forward. Movement builds fluency. Hesitation breaks it. Now imagine yourself in a real situation again. You hear something. You understand it. You respond. You don't replay it in your head. You don't analyze it afterward. You let it pass. That's what confidence looks like in practice. Now let's talk about mistakes one last time. At advanced levels, mistakes are not failures. They're signals. Signals that you're operating in real time. If you never make mistakes, you're probably not speaking enough. Fluent speakers don't aim to eliminate mistakes. They aim to recover times smoothly. They rephrase, they clarify, they move on, and so can you. Now let's talk about rhythm. English has rhythm, not just grammar. You've heard it throughout this video. Short phrases, natural pauses, soft endings. You don't need to imitate accents. You don't need to sound like someone else. You just need to let your speech breathe. Speak a little slower than you think you should. Pause when you need to. Let silence work for you. Silence is not empty. It's part of communication. Now, let's talk about your identity in English. You don't need a new personality when you speak English. You don't need to become louder, funnier, or more confident than you are. You can be calm. You can be thoughtful. You can be quiet. English supports all of that. Advanced speakers are not all extroverts. They are just comfortable. Comfort comes from familiarity, and familiarity comes from exposure. Now imagine your next airport experience. You walk in, you hear the sounds, you see the signs. Nothing feels foreign anymore. Not because you know every word, but because you recognize the times flow asterisk. You know when to listen. You know when to speak. You know when silence is enough. That's real mastery. Now let's talk about continuing this path. If you want to keep improving, focus on environments, not levels. Airports, hotels, meetings, conversations. Learn English by times, place, asterisk, not by rule. Each place has patterns. Once you know the patterns, language becomes predictable. Predictability reduces fear. Fear is what blocks speech. Now let's talk about patience. Fluency is not linear. Some days you'll feel sharp. Some days you'll feel slow. That's normal. Advanced speakers don't panic on slow days. They don't judge themselves. They stay consistent. Consistency beats intensity. Now let's close with something important. You don't need permission to speak English. You don't need approval. You already belong in the conversation. English is not owned by any one group. It's a shared tool, and you're allowed to use it. If this experience helped you feel calmer, clearer, or more confident, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. English in Mastery exists for learners who want depth, not pressure. If you want to share where you're listening from, or how English fits into your life, leave a comment, even a short one. Connection matters. Now, take one more breath. You're not rushing anywhere. You're not behind. You're exactly where you need to be. And when you step into your next real-life English moment, remember this. You don't need perfect English. You need present English. And you already have that. Thank you for listening.